Good evening. I will call the Thursday, August 4th, 2022 Niskayuna Police Reform Implementation Task Force to order. We will take attendance. We have Attorney Finnan, Chief Koshin, Beth Greenwood, Jamie Puccioni, Marina Franchild, and can I get a motion to approve the minutes for the July 7th, 2022 meeting? In a second. Thank you. Fourth on our agenda is a report and presentation by Subcommittee C. Oh. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. I apologize. Mhm. Oh, your microphone's not on.
Okay, sorry. All right, a big change is there was confusion about the estimated implementation timeline, about whether the numbers represented how long it took to accomplish the task, the recommendation, or whether the numbers were how long from a certain date it would take to implement. It was very unclear. So the wording in the original resolution for this task force was that instead of that we should use the words now for something that's completed and soon for something that's not completed. So the timeline, like in item 1C, it says 9 months from the current revision date. So the current revision date is August 2nd. So let's say we publish this as a final, let's say in 3 months, then it should say 6 months from current revision date. So the numbers should change so that we see progression, unless if something prevents this task from being completed, and then that will be stipulated and spelled out in the notes column. So everything will be clear and transparent, and there'll be no more confusion. Is everybody okay with that? Good. All right. Now, unfortunately, I didn't print mine out in color, so I will need some help. Jordan, is yours printed out in color? So I want to talk about the ones that have the changes in the notes, please.
So the first one I think is 2C
2C.
would be the first one.
Okay. So in 2C, Jordan and I spoke and we elaborated upon this. And now this is what it says now. The Niskayuna Police Department has spoken with SUNY Albany Criminal Justice Program regarding possible funding of graduate student analyst position. It always said that. Now it says analyst position will create stakeholder surveys to assess the priorities and needs of Niskayuna, not in 2022 budget. Are there any questions about this?
I never received this document. Was it sent by email?
Yes.
It-
Okay.
It's probably in the, mine got caught in the spam. Yeah.
Should we get Jamie a copy?
I can get her a copy. Absolutely.
I think that would be helpful.
Do you have the ability to pull your spam 14 or no? Because it's under a different email address. I think it's the Gmail account is how it was emailed. I'll make a copy.
Thank you.
I feel like I should just maybe interject a little bit while we're waiting for Chief to come back with the copy of the revisions. Jamie, do you have the actual like the old document that you can reference? Do you
There have
have-
been a lot of revisions. The last one was.
There
the-
was. I
the
was just.
end of July.
I was just thinking that. I know I had sent out the email.
Yeah, and everything that you said was incorporated.
Right. So I thought while we're waiting for that, because I want to have that discussion, but while we're waiting, I was just going to point out that there were some newly now completed items, and
Excellent.
those we can just kind of go over briefly just so you can see where that change was. And that would have been recommendation 8.1.
It's not organized
Oh,
according to the 8.1. It's organized according to the 8.1. Things like that are in the findings. So could you please tell us what finding number?
Oh, I didn't write it.
Oh,
Let me s-
8.1 is not, I only brought I only brought C with me.
Let me see if I can find. Okay, I get what you're saying. So that one isn't in C.
Right.
Then that might doesn't help.
I think it's under finding 8. It just, under the recommendation, it clarifies that it's 8.1 for some reason.
Possibly. I didn't bring both 40 some odd pages. I just was.
Well, I guess I
concerned-
can just note that those, just so that we have it as part of the record and the minutes,
Yes,
is that
yes.
the newly completed items that are now listed as now are recommendations 8.1, 9.1, 9.2, and 41.2. And then we were also looking, which I think is what Jordan is going to, or Chief is going to get, so we can show, but we were looking to have some type of discussion, just brief, as to what we're looking or hoping to do with SUNY Albany Criminal Justice Program and how that will help us complete some of the recommendations. And I know recommendations 2C, 18C, and 47.1 were updated on
Yes.
this to reflect that collaboration, if we're able to get that and make that work, and how that will help us to accomplish some of those items.
Yeah, we had a meeting. Not everybody that's here was at that meeting. It was the Taskforce on Racial Justice and Equity. I always get that wrong, on Racial Equity and Justice, I think is the actual correct title. And people from PRITF. And we were talking about that it's very hard to know how you define justice. It's very, very difficult to know what constitutes equity, words like that. And that we would need assistance from academia in order to have working definitions to put together any surveys that were needed so that they were not biased, and also to discuss a possible methodology of disseminating the survey so that as many stakeholders as possible would be included. Because the method, if somebody doesn't have broadband, they'll have no knowledge that the survey is even going out, and they may have a lot to say. So that's all part of defining what justice and equity is. And as non-experts, it's very hard to do that. So we reached out to SUNY to get assistance with defining what that would be as working definitions. There's so few of us here, I'm going to actually take this off.
No, that's right, have space.
Yeah. Thank you.
So to summarize, it sounds like you found a great way, Marina, to change the way we look at the time and to make that more comprehensive and make more sense. So if someone's looking at the document, they know exactly when the date starts and that can keep getting refreshed. The notes will be another resource to look at why that got refreshed.
Yes.
So thank you for doing that, because that's been an ongoing big question mark for us for a while now.
Yeah,
So that's
well, I
amazing.
also want to thank Jordan because he's a wonderful person to collaborate with. We get along very well. And we're able to come up with a solution that makes everybody feel happy, for lack of a better word.
Mhm.
This was naughty. We kept going over the same stuff. And finally, when I looked at what it was called, the estimated implementation timeline, that takes our feet out of the fire because of the word estimated. And the notes gives us an opportunity to elaborate on that. And by adding from the current revision, that makes the numbers make more sense. So we were able to figure it out.
That was great.
Sometimes the simplest things are the hardest to figure out.
I know, it takes time.
Right.
We were all patient. And then while we were waiting for the copy to be made, Elena explained that there were 3 items that went from soon to completed
To now is what it was.
to now. Okay.
And I told Elena I was just going to touch on, again, an overarching theme with regards, even in this subset of the collaborative recommendations for implementation, the fostering community-oriented leadership culture and accountability, having the potential for that SUNY Albany graduate, I think is going to be immensely helpful for this as well. And we had talked about it, Supervisor Puccioni and myself, when we, during our subgroup conversation, previous meetings, I think that's going to cover an array of these items, or at least impact and influence and focus those things to give us a better grasp on how we can do things, not only in a collaborative, but in the town better. So we look forward to that partnership. We're actually due for another meeting here in the next week or two with them to continue the next steps forward and hopefully get that set up. So I just wanted to touch on that as well, that plays a big role, an integral role in a lot of what we're talking about here in Group C too. So.
Yeah, and it comes up more than once. The next one, I actually can tell what's red because it's lighter. I can tell. The next one is 2A, and that is we already discussed that. The next one is 3A, and that's been completed. So there's only one staff member that remains that hasn't finished reviewing their personnel file, and they will do it. So we wrote now because it's only one. Everybody else has done it, and it's in the note. The next one was about 4C, to incentivize personnel. NPD should increase participation in creation of goals, internal, external recognition, awards, training, and increase responsibilities and promotions. And that's been completed. And the update is that goal creation has been implemented on every level, including department-wide, and the awards program needs to be reinstated. And the anticipation of that being reinstated at this point in time is a 6 to 9 month timeline. One of the things that came up in a conversation between me and Jordan was how often should awards be awarded? And that's not really part of this 4C, but that was a discussion. So I just want the record to note that.
Yeah,
Do
there
you
was,
wanna say
and
anything?
no, I did. It's something that, you know, I've been thinking about a lot, obviously, because it was very important to me, not only through the collaboration process, because it was obviously spoken about, but just in becoming the chief of police to reinstitute that, because I think recognizing the good work of our police officers is incredibly important. It's rewarding for them, their families, to demonstrate their good work. And what Marina and I had spoken about was, you know, in the past, there were times where, you know, long ago, I was looking through some old files, and, you know, it was during police week and during just the regular public safety meeting that they were sort of doing recognition. Or, you know, when I first came on, there was actually a formal awards program, singularly, that was done, that we haven't continued since. And so we were just kind of talking about that. And I don't know if I mentioned to Marina at that time or not, but Supervisor Puccioni and I had talked about this as well in conjunction with like performance evaluations. And it all kind of plays a role together, as far as those things. And I think they interlock and intertwine. So we have to kind of get them all on the same page together at the same time, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. Shall I move on?
Yes.
Okay. The next one is 5C. And this is about the NPD rolling out a community policing program. And it says soon, 6 to 9 months from current revision date. So the Coffee with the Cop program, internships, proactive police contact model is currently being done. But again, here is another note about the awards program. So it's the same conversation we had a moment ago. 6C, publicize individual officer achievements. And again, it's the same note. All right, for 7C, oh, there was something that I did not take out that I should have taken out in the notes column. That will be removed. So what's on the bottom, it will be removed. It will not be in the public document. It is inappropriate. And it will just simply say NPD would never hire an officer who refused to sign a release of information form. All right, sorry about that. 8C, again, soon, 9 months from current revision date. Regular evaluation of use of force currently ongoing with personnel, including remedial training or corrective action if an officer is found to use force in an unjustified fashion. That's in response to the recommendation to track the use of force in the officer's annual evaluation. All uses of force should be reviewed during the performance review. Any excessive outlier amount of use of force should be reviewed during the regular personnel evaluation, as well as after the incident. Implement remedial training, corrective action if an officer is found to use force in an unjustified fashion. The recommendation doesn't talk about reviewing the historical record, but Jordan and I had a very, very long conversation about this. And I do feel that it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's implicit that is part of this review. It has to be. Otherwise, if everything is just evaluated on a case basis, any trends are not going to be recognized. And since use of force is such a serious thing that New York State and the country is concerned about, we really need to have a historical review conducted as part and parcel of an officer's review of a specific incident. Does anyone have any objections to that?
And Marina, as you and I spoke about, you know, that wasn't a part of what this recommendation was.
Right.
We agree to that. And I told you that obviously trends would be monitored. And when we review use of force or any circumstance with an officer, if there was some sort of negative trend or something that we noticed, that would certainly be addressed. Specific to what we're talking about here, I think that what they're asking for is that snapshot of that year for that performance evaluation.
Mhm.
And what you and I spoke about was that will be documented every single year in that evaluation.
Yes.
And then in conjunction with that, on a case-by-case basis, trend basis, historical basis.
Yes, and I remember when we went to your office and you showed, and on the screen, and you showed us the review process, and you showed us how things are tracked.
Yep.
I felt very comforted by that. But the average person, the average citizen doesn't have the privilege of spending time with you in your office and seeing that display. So that's why I wanted it to be in the notes so that everybody's aware that there is a historical review, that you're not blind to that, that it's
No.
being taken care of. So that's why I wanted that note.
Of course, of course.
Right. Okay. The next one is, this one is tricky, and I wrote TBD because I don't have a clue. So let me read what the recommendation is. And Elena, I'm so happy that you're here. 9C, identify a way that the subject's narrative is included in the use of force report to allow a more unbiased review of the report. We know that there are PBA legal constraints. It's very, very difficult to know how to handle this. I would like to just capture the conversation in summary, and then we can all talk about it.
Okay.
If a person, let's say, is apprehended when their judgment is impaired, let's say they were high and driving and they're apprehended, they may say any kind of stuff that will be self-incriminating. They don't have a lawyer there at that moment. So to protect the person, you probably don't want to have a written narrative of what they said at that moment. You probably would want them to be read their Miranda rights and for them to have the opportunity to have counsel. But if it's just body-worn cameras, I feel, this is my opinion, that could be skewed where it's like tunnel vision. You only see a certain snapshot and don't see the whole thing. So I don't know how to judiciously handle this. I have no clue.
Okay, so my comments, I wasn't able to attend the subcommittee meeting, but I did send out comments. When I read this, I think the intention was that the people who drafted these recommendations essentially were looking to, instead of, when evaluating use of force, instead of just having the police officer's narrative that the suspect or the person that the force was used against would be able to also provide a narrative so that you have both sides of the story and can have a more unbiased review of the report as it states here. What I had indicated is that they're not in all circumstances, but in certainly a conceivable majority, I would think, of circumstances in which use of force is used, there could be legal implications, not for the PBA specifically, but for the subject's rights, because the police, once Miranda's read, if they invoke their right to remain silent or invoke their right to an attorney, or if an attorney attaches, you don't even necessarily need Miranda for an attorney to attach where there's an arrest and arraignment, then you can't necessarily get a statement without the consent of the attorney. And if the person was charged with resisting arrest or obstructing governmental administration or something that oftentimes does come with the need to use force, then no attorney is going to allow their client to even make a statement. And my comment specifically with respect to the body-worn cameras is that once we have them, then perhaps it may alleviate that concern a little bit, because what is happening on camera should be, or what is happening would be captured on camera. I mean, from my experience, and I don't know what the policy's going to be at this time, but just in my experience in other departments, a lot of times once lights are activated in the car or they arrive on scene, then the body camera activates. So the entire situation is being caught on camera, and there really shouldn't be too many situations in which there is a tunnel view. But I'm not, obviously, things
Right.
can happen, equipment can malfunction, whatever the case may be. I'm not saying it's foolproof, but I just kind of made a comment that perhaps once we have body-worn cameras up and running, that it might help alleviate some of the
Yeah.
concern about an unbiased review.
I've probably read too many spy novels where this is what you see and you evaluate it based upon this, but actually the story really starts here and you don't find out about it until later. So that's what I was concerned about. But procedurally, where I'm really confused is how does anybody's narrative happen? Like, what is the sequence of events or report is generated? How does that work? There's use of force, and then there's some sort of report, and you're saying that the suspect might put himself in jeopardy, him or herself in jeopardy, if they issue their narrative that's included in the report, but I don't know the timing of the report. When does that happen?
I'm wondering if that is one of those tangents that we get off on sometimes because this is so, I mean, this just makes every question just makes for idea just, makes our brains go on a million tangents.
Yeah.
So for the interest of time, maybe we stick to this more black and white and concrete,
Mhm.
and then maybe we write down our questions for later. I just
I think
don't,
that's really great.
I just get worried about us not getting to.
I appreciate that.
I don't mind taking notes on questions too.
Right. Could we like table this for now, but think about it and send emails out with
Sure.
questions and handle it that way? And
That's fine.
then circle back next month? Would that be okay?
That's fine with me.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. 10C, it completed, was just changed to now 11, and that was about banning the chokeholds and use of force. And we're using the Niskayuna Police Department is using the New York State model of force on chokeholds, where it's criminalized, it's a felony. So that's really good that we're in compliance. 11C, create an independent civilian review board, and this was suggestions for what it would include and what it wouldn't include as applicable to Niskayuna as a specific municipality was discussed and presented, and it's put on the shared drive a while ago. So that would be submitted, one last look would be added for typos and stuff like that, but it would be submitted to the town board. So we've kind of done all the work that we can do as a recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
The next one was a little bit confusing, and in the name of time, I would like to just start off by saying that I would like to have some sort of a way that we could have a conversation with you, Jamie, in particular, about 11C. Now, 11C says create an independent civilian review board as recommended by the New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. And it goes on and on. My understanding is that there's going to be a new broad-based task force or committee that's going to be formed, and that the Racial Equity and Justice Task Force is going to be dissolved. Am I right about that?
It has been, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. And I would just like to share briefly my concern coming out of ignorance, essentially, because I don't really know much about it. All right. But the only parallel that I can give is as a member of the LGBTQ community, the only thing that we all have in common, whatever letter we are, is that we're non-heteronormative. That's about it. Gay men and lesbians don't have the same issue as each other, except for the heteronormative aspect and discrimination based on that. People who are transitioning, they have a whole different set of issues. Again, we're all we're not, our plumbing, for somebody that's where their genitalia is, they maintain it throughout their lives. That may not be the case with someone who's transitioning. So only thing that all the letters have in common is that we're not mainstream. That's really it. And in the process of uniting to get legal recognition and laws passed, there's been also a lack where now it's vogue to be transitioning, and lesbians, people like me, are no longer in the gay community considered valid. Anybody that identifies as a woman is a lesbian, sexually is a lesbian. So if somebody has a penis, they're a lesbian, and if they sleep with other women. But somebody like me, is not, nobody is acknowledging lesbians who are cis female. So on the one hand, I'm using this as a way of a parallel because it's the easiest way I can explain what I really want to talk to you about. So on the one hand, lesbians that are cis lesbians that are anti-trans folks, I think that they're wrong. I think that they're narrow-minded, and I think they do damage. But by the same token, people that don't validate the cis lesbian experience and erase us, I think they're also doing damage. So my concern, using this as an analog, is I think in America, where racism is such a problem, it is such a ubiquitous problem. It's so entrenched in every aspect of American life. The Constitution, going back that far, has racist aspects. I am worried that if we have a big, broad equivalent of LGBTQ that takes all people that have oppression in Niskayuna into account, that racism as a particularly odious function of a bad society, of a white supremacist society, that it will get lost in the shuffle. I'm really I'm losing sleep over this. Again, I don't really know what you have in mind, but I just wanted to express my uninformed worry.
Okay, we can have a separate meeting to discuss that in more detail.
So I was assuming that the Civilian Review Board would kind of be similar to what you've just created, this new committee. I was thinking that there was a connection.
No, there isn't.
Oh, there isn't? Mm-mm. Then what I would like to discuss now is what would a Civilian Review Board do? Because I don't really have a clear understanding of that.
Are you asking about historically what civilian review boards do? Other ones that have been formed?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Just a minute. Just a second. Please strike that. I'm pretty tired and I read the wrong word and I saw the word citizen. For some reason, my brain saw the word citizen. I apologize. Forget that. Let's move on. I'm sorry. Just very tired.
But I would love to have you come visit and we can talk about your concerns
Thank you.
related to the advisory committee for diversity, equity, and
Thank you.
inclusion, because I think the points you raise are incredibly valid. And I also have discussed those same concerns with other leaders in the DEI workspace in the Capital Region.
Yes. Yes, and I apologize for my fatigue. We've had contractors in and I haven't gotten a lot of sleep. So sorry. All right. So the next one is 12C. Use of force incidents involving any officer should be recorded through dash cam and BWC. Well, the dash cam system has been upgraded and the new BWC system has been purchased but is not yet delivered. The dash cam system currently records all use of force incidents. The body-worn camera system also will record all use of force incidents, and these two systems will trigger each other. So the now is that the dash cam has been upgraded, that the BWC has been purchased, but because it hasn't been delivered yet, we're waiting for the BWC and we're hoping that we'll have it in 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so we have a dash cam system that's currently in place that is outdated, that is going to be upgraded with the purchase that we've made of the body worn camera system. So there is a dash cam system that currently records to the best of its ability. It's old technology, and that is going to be upgraded in conjunction with the body worn cameras from the same company, and they integrate and speak to each other and turn on at the same time.
13C. NPD should develop a policy detailing how the command staff will debrief with officers after critical incidents. Completed was changed to now, and it's in the new Lexipol policy. 14C. The Civilian Review Board should review all substantiated complaints of misconduct and settlements of adverse or adverse verdicts in lawsuits to improve policies and processes. The Civilian Review Board should report to the Niskayuna Town Board and the supervisor. We recommend a police general order that ensures full cooperation with investigation. That will be soon. We don't have a timeline for this one. Do we, Jordan? For 14C?
No, we use the same language about passing this on to the town board to review more thoroughly in conjunction with the work that you and Dale did regarding potential appropriate for Niskayuna examples.
Yes. Thank you. And 15C, this is the one that where I got confused that I was referring to. Niskayuna Town Board should establish community advisory groups. This is the one. So sorry about that confusion. The group should represent the larger community with targeted recruiting in an open fashion through public outreach. The groups can serve to provide tailored input and presentation of options for complex issues that the town and policies face. Selection for participation should be determined based on the focus of each advisory group. The advisory group should report to the appropriate committee of Niskayuna Town Board and the supervisor. And that was all of my comments where it says TBD. I knew it was on here somewhere. All right, 16.
I'm with you. I
Yeah.
read you.
I can tell, thank you. 16C, off-duty officers must avoid inappropriate behaviors, e.g. harassment, bullying, trolling, doing activities that would attract law enforcement attention, binge drinking, making controversial social media posts, etc., both in person and online. And again, the completed was changed to now, and it's covered by the town code and policy. 17C, establish and publicize an easy and accessible process for members of the community to report complaints about police misconduct, consider multiple methods, including online, hard copy, telephone, etc. Soon, 6 to 9 months, because a new complaint form is being developed. 18C, design and conduct meaningful community surveys and follow them up with interactive public discussion forums. We recommend reaching out to local academic institutions for assistance with survey design and implementation plans. Soon, 9 months from current revision. And this is the same thing about engaging with SUNY. Same note. Finding 46. Most NPD data on police community member interactions exhibit racial disparities. NPD enforcement affects Black community members disproportionately. Recommendation 46.1, NPD should conduct further internal analysis to understand the policies and practices that contribute to these disparities and adjust them to reduce disparities. It should also proactively address the possibility of biased behavior by continuing to regularly train officers on an anti-bias policing. And completed was changed to now. And then recommendation 46.2, NPD should regularly reanalyze law enforcement data to understand whether it is reducing disparities over time. NPD should use multiple baseline options, as we demonstrate in this report, so that disparities are not masked by data that already exhibit disproportionately as the baseline, e.g. limiting analysis to only suspect data, and that is soon. And again, this will be discussed further with SUNY. The last one is finding 47. An independent, objective, and ongoing assessment of NPD's progress toward the recommendations in this report will be essential to the implementation and sustainment of the proposed changes. Recommendation 47.1. The town of Niskayuna and NPD should engage an independent audit firm to track and monitor progress toward implementing the recommendations proposed in this report. Again, we will be engaging with SUNY to discuss this further. And that concludes Subcommittee C updates.
Thank you. That was very thorough.
Thank you.
And you're very
Incredibly thorough.
yes,
I try.
impressive. All right, so we'll move on to item 5 on our agenda, which is new issues. Marina already brought up a couple of them. One has a plan for an email, and one has a plan for a potential meeting with Supervisor Puccioni.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Should we move on to item 6, or are there other new items? Okay. Marina, are you good if we move on? Okay. We can move on to privilege of the floor. If there were members of the public here? It looks like there are none. So then we would move on to agenda number 7, the adjournment of the meeting. Do I have a motion for adjournment? Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That concludes our meeting, and our next meeting will be the first Thursday of September 1st at 5:30.
Are we still broadcasting?